Rodney Orr, hope you're having a great Thursday afternoon. Welcome into the game here in T-Town.
Doing great, Ryan. Listen, I've got a little tip for you here. You need to, when you get Bill Searcy on,
okay,
a good question to ask him. You know, they're talking about a lot of points being possibly scored in this game, this Alabama-Ole Miss game.
Okay.
Bill started on the offensive line on the 1980 team, okay? They played Ole Miss over in Jackson. It was a 59-35 shootout. Of course, Alabama won, but Ole Miss had a quarterback named John Forte that lit them up pretty well. That was when the passing rules were kind of changing with the way the offensive linemen could use their hands and, you know, allowed the passing teams a little bit of an advantage, and teams started throwing the ball more. And, you know, Ole Miss was one of the first teams to do that with Steve Sloan, of course, the former Alabama player and athletic director later on. But anyway, that's something you might want to ask Bill Searcy about.
Well, and certainly, I've written that question down. That'll be one that we'll definitely work into the conversation. We'd love to talk about history of Alabama. And, you know, Rodney, I guess maybe this is a great way to start it. Other than the game that you just mentioned, because I literally wrote down some questions that I wanted to ask you because you're a historian of college football, really dialed on the history of the Alabama Crimson Tide. What is some of those key matchups that you remember when you think about Alabama going up against Ole Miss?
Well, you know, Ryan, the first one I remember, I was probably 8 or 9 years old in 1969 watching the Alabama-Ole Miss game that was at Legion Field on TV. I was a kid in Corpus Christi, Texas, and Archie Manning, Scott Hunter. And what a shootout it was. Alabama won 33-32. I mean, Archie Manning was everything, Ryan, that you've heard. You know, he could run, he could throw, he could do it all. And Scott Hunter, you know, had a great game as well. And, of course, that's the most memorable game of my lifetime, certainly. You know, because it's the first one, and there's been some other great Alabama Ole Miss games, and you know, some of them didn't turn out well for Alabama here recently, and I think the Ole Miss people would probably tell you those are two of the biggest wins in their history of their school in 2014 and 2015, obviously with Hugh Freeze. And you could go back to 1988. That would be another memorable one, of course. Was not good for Alabama when Alabama did not complete a pass in the whole game and, lost the game here. And, you know, Bill Curry, of course, the famous brick story, had the brick thrown through his window supposedly. But, you know, all of those things part of the history. But Alabama overall, Ryan, you've probably got the numbers right in front of you. I mean, it's just dominated, you know, this series.
Yeah, no doubt. Even, you know, I always think about the bad years of Alabama football. 2000 was not and I'm not trying to think about the bad years. I'm just saying even in some of the bad years, 2000 was the worst in probably a long time with that 3-8 campaign, and they killed Ole Miss 45-7. I mean,
yeah.
You know, that's the games that even in some of the poor years for Alabama, they've been able to take care of Ole Miss.
Right. Yeah, again, it's been a, good series, for Alabama for the most part. But, again, this game here, Ryan, obviously going over there, road game, first time we'll see Bama in the whites this year. Obviously had the neutral site game versus Louisville and Orlando. But, it'd be interesting to see how the team responds in a night game over there because, the atmosphere is going to be pretty raucous over there, in Oxford, and they've been awaiting Alabama. And, Ryan, think about this. Can you believe that the two starting quarterbacks in this game both are from Hawaii, like 10 minutes apart?
It's crazy. It's crazy to even think about it. I'm not sure if we've even given that enough attention for what these two young men, because Jordan Ta'amu is a guy that, I mean, he's an excellent quarterback. And really, you easily forget about a guy named Shea Patterson.
Yeah. Matter of fact, Ole Miss might have gotten the better end of that bargain with Shea Patterson leaving and going to Michigan. Ta'amu, I really like him a lot. He's done a nice job. He's got 7 touchdown passes this year, Brian, first 2 games, no interceptions. He's got great receivers. Obviously, we know A.J. Brown, DeMarcus Lodge, DK Metcalf. All those guys are really, really dangerous, and they've got a good running back now with Scotty Phillips, JUCO transfer. Went for over 200 yards in the opener against Texas Tech, and then went for over 100 again against Southern Illinois last weekend. But Ryan, I mean, giving up 629 yards and 41 points to Southern Illinois. Wow, that's a lot, especially when you consider Alabama coming in with a really high-powered attack that they have with Tua, with the receivers that Alabama has, all the weapons, the tight ends. Hopefully the offensive line will continue to improve, which I think they will. and this core of running backs that they have. So this could be a game that, like I said, put up a lot of points. Wouldn't surprise me if you see I don't really know if it'll be a shootout, but I picked it 49-24.
Okay.
And I could see Alabama scoring more than that.
49-24. I like writing these down to see the prediction. We're talking to Rodney Orr, TiderInsider.com. Rodney, I want you to look at Alabama, and I know it's only 2 games in. Give me one unit that you think has performed as a group. You can go offense, you can go defense, you can go different levels of the defense, offensive line, running backs, wide receivers, quarterback. Give me one unit that you think has performed above your expectations that you had on this football team as we travel in to the game in Orlando and then back here with Arkansas State. One unit that you think has performed above your expectations.
Well, my mind's really running right now, Ryan, to try to figure that out because, we have such high expectations. I mean, let's be honest. I mean, we kind of have come to that, expectation of every year they're going to perform at a really high level. I think the one thing, though, Ryan, and I'll get straight to your point, but I think people need to understand. Go back and look at the Alabama teams. Most of them early in the season, especially coming off the big games when they have the openers, neutral site openers, Alabama comes back and doesn't always play extremely well in that second game. I mean, there's a lot of sloppy sometimes play. And you remember 2012, the offensive line gave up, 8 sacks to Western Kentucky. And people were all in a, tizzy about that. And then it turns out, obviously, to be one of the best offensive lines to ever, suit up in college football. So, but I don't really not know that I've got a specific answer for you, but I would say this, because we talked about it in the preseason and on your show. I still think when you look at this secondary, and they lost a ton of players, obviously 6 players, some great players, NFL players, a lot of them. The Minkah Fitzpatrick, one of the best of all time at Alabama. With the exception of Minkah, we said that, hey, this group here would probably be more athletic overall than that group. And I really think they are. And I think that when you start to look at them and the way they lined up in practice over the last couple of days with Surtain and Savion Smith at the corners, those are big corners. Trevon Diggs is a big corner. He was moved inside the star. We'll see if they play that way against Ole Miss. It'll be interesting. But you look at those 3 guys, those are 3 really big guys that are very, very athletic. And I really like Deontay Thompson. We've seen him, how he's performed so far in the first 2 games. Xavier McKinney, as we said in the preseason, we thought he would be a budding star, and it looks like he is. As time goes on, keep an eye on him, number 15. And so I look at that secondary, and I think if they can get a real pass rush, Ryan, and start developing a pass rush, that's the one area that I think we really need to see some improvement this week, hopefully. This secondary is going to really shine.
What would be your evaluation early on of the front 7, looking at the defensive line and linebackers? Because I agree with you. I think secondary has really stepped up their game for really the expectations going in, losing all those guys back there. But maybe even the front 7, maybe not as much pressure as you want, maybe not as much domination as maybe we thought from Isaiah Buggs and Raekwon Davis. I'm sure those guys will get clicking as we progress throughout the season. But maybe just your evaluation of that front 7, linebackers, defensive line.
Yeah, and it's hard to really say. At times, I think they've looked pretty good, but at times maybe not, and they haven't gotten a lot of pressure, as you mentioned. But we have to remember too now, Terrell Lewis got knocked out early. He hasn't played, obviously. May be out for the year with that knee. So that was a big blow, because he was a guy that was going to, when you stack him up there with Quinnen Williams, Isaiah Buggs, Raekwon Davis, and all of a sudden you got a different look, because he is a real talented pass rush guy. Chris Allen, I thought, had a chance to be, a strong contributor in that role as well. So those were 2 big losses in my opinion. And so we'll just really have to see how they, kind of start to develop. But this game will give us a better idea. I think still inside at linebacker, I really like Mac Wilson and Dylan Moses, but at the same time, I think there's been, and Mac Wilson said this, he's had some issues in terms of communicating with the secondary and the coverages and all those types of things, making the calls. So I think obviously they're hoping for improvement there. So there's still a lot of areas that need to improve, Ryan, and I still think they're probably going to maybe mix it up in terms of the pass rush. Maybe we see more of Dylan Moses lining up outside and coming off the edge. Maybe we see Mac Wilson lining up out there. Just they've got to do something, I think, to generate more pass rush.
We're talking to Rodney Orr, TiderInsider.com. Rodney, let's go to Tua Tagovailoa and just your thoughts of what this young man is off to. I know it's 2 games. It's a limited sample size, but you're beginning to kind of talk about, the elite status, that the throws that he's making. We had Brad Edwards on early this week. He threw out a stat that he's 6 for 6 on passes beyond 15 yards. We know what he's done on third down, spreading the football. I think it's 9 different receivers catching balls. So far, Tua Tagovailoa grabbing our attention. What do you have to say?
Yeah, all those stats you mentioned, scoring on 10 of 13 opportunities that they've had the ball with him in the game, and I think they would probably score it another time if there not been a fumble. It's just been phenomenal the way he started. A lot of people question, why, I'm not really sure, but a lot of people wondered how he would respond after the championship game, as if it was some sort of fluke. But anyway, he's responded really, really well. I do think that, we saw with Louisville, maybe to some extent also with Arkansas State, where I think they're trying to figure out what's the best way to, defend Alabama. And a lot of that's been pressure, I think. They've come after him. And the impressive thing to me, Ryan, is he seems like he's beat it most every time. I don't have any statistics on that, but it sure looks like he's done extremely well against pressure. But they feel like obviously getting him to move and maybe affecting him and throwing him off a little bit or making him throw a little bit early is the best route to take. That seems to be the philosophy right now. We'll see what Ole Miss tries to do. If you don't rush him, then he's going to pick you apart. So I guess, you really don't have a lot of choice.
It's a great point.
So I expect teams to continue to try to do that, to try to throw him off. And, so far he's responded really, really well. And I think if that's what they continue to do, he'll probably continue to get better at it.
All right. So if I gave you the option, will they pass for more yards on Saturday or run for more? Because these balanced offense has been the key under Nick Saban for many, many years. You think they throw for more? You think they run for more? Because you can really control that clock and keep that explosive offense to the sidelines. What do you think Nick Saban chooses to do on Saturday?
Well, Ryan, I was watching some of the footage of the Texas Tech game, and when Texas Tech is knocking gaping holes, the size of the Red Sea, parting the Red Sea, surely Alabama will be able to, line up and control that line of scrimmage and run the football really well. Again, I think Alabama can strike with big plays against this Ole Miss defense, but also believe, they're going to have a great chance to run the football for very successfully. So, I don't know which is more, but I do think that they're going to pile up some points and pile up some yards. They've got a great opportunity to do that.
TiderInsider.com, Rodney Orr, the editor, the founder of that great website covering the Alabama Crimson Tide, TITV with Gary Harris each Tuesday at 6:30. Rodney's got 49-24. That's a big prediction for the Alabama Crimson Tide. Rodney, as always, thank you for being a part of the show, and I hope you have a great weekend.
Okay, Ryan, I appreciate it.